Hey, what's going on, everybody? Today I'm going to be talking a little bit about what an infographic is and how it applies and all the different types of things that it actually does when it comes to the graphic design world. And I kind of like to think of the infographic as like the ultimate product because it's complete. The big thing you have to know is that an infographic is giving the audience a little bit more information, whereas opposed to a poster, it's just very brief in nature. The infographic, if I had to sum it up, is just a bunch of visual elements to include like icons and charts and illustrations, text, of course. And those visual elements are used, they're arranged to explain a topic or maybe to tell a story. There's a variety of uses for them. Typically, the infographic is kind of the most versatile product because you can give more information to the audience for them to like understand, retain, and then act upon if there's a call to action of some sort. On screen, I'm going to show you a few examples of some good infographics and talk about their usage. So let me just see if I can present. And I can. There we go. Cool. So the first one that I'm going to present here is this infographic right here. Now, notice a couple key interesting facts about this one. This one actually has a lot of tidbits of information that describe the topic powering the nation, because that is the title. That is the title, and the subtitle says Key Insights on U.S. Energy and Jobs in 2004. So right from the title and the subtitle, your audience can expect that they're going to learn about some energy statistics, about the different insights on U.S. energy for the year 2024. Now, if I look at this infographic, notice a couple of things. We have bits of information that break down this topic by the use of charts. We are using illustrations. We are also using what is known as like high fact or like high interesting facts. Clean energy added a total of 142,000 jobs, and even has a call to action where your audience can learn more in the form of QR code, which, fun fact, InDesign can actually create QR codes. That actually works. So if you need to send your audience to, say, get more information or maybe some resources or like, your reference material, it's a great way to do it. And I'm going to go to this one right here. And this infographic is interesting because this is what's known as a diagram infographic. And it's about the meaning behind the U.S. Air Force symbol. Now, what's interesting about this one is that this top element that has the Air Force symbol, this is actually a diagram, and it's showing me the different pieces that the symbol represents, the historic meaning behind the different elements in the symbol itself. But also we have like interesting tidbits of information, including a did you know. A did you know is very popular when it comes to infographics because they actually will kind of like give your audience something to remember. And this was a great example. This was a student example. This is what's known as a hybrid, by the way. We have facts here and we have a diagram up here. Moving on over to a little number I had to make for the school here. And the concept behind this is a diagram. And the reason why it's a diagram is because this was showing the students as well as the staff on how to address appropriately for like polo day or dress down days. And you can see here I'm using these pointers and colors and text hierarchy here to represent a clothing diagram, as well as explanations of the differences between like a polo day versus a dress down day. Really, your infographic is like your one-stop shop. When you think about the poster, it is brief in nature. The infographic seeks to give the audience more information. It dissects a topic. It, like I said, maybe tells a story. And it's very, very popular when it comes to military applications because typically we have a lot of information to put out, whether it be like uniform regulations or it could be, do's and don'ts. But the infographic is one of those products that gives you a lot of flexibility to what you display, as well as what you can actually present and distribute. And I think I have another couple examples here. Here's another one I had to make for a Dinfos Live. I'll post that video. And here we go. 5 ways to remember what not to share. Sure, it's not the best designed infographic in the world, but it hits all the bills because this right here is what is known as a factual index. A factual index has 4 or more bits of information. In this case, I have 5. The 5 dubs, to be specific, on OPSEC. And I actually have additional information on the bottom right here in the form of this quantogram and this donut chart, and that's what is known as data visualization, and it just aids and supports the information, the main dubs, the 5 W's of what not to share. And here's an interesting one that also uses data visualization. And again, a data viz or visualization is just pie charts and column charts. Anything that's a chart is what is known as a data visualization. And this one takes advantage of that because this whole main illustration right here uses a donut chart and the topic, what you should know about vegetarianism. And it gives you breakdown information about being a vegetarian and the different things that go into the diet and some high interesting facts at the bottom. A little bit small on the text side here, but again, it's all about how large your infographic is and where it's going to be displayed. And I love the color palette, matches the avocado theme. Very cool. And this, by the way, this is what's known as a hybrid as well because it's a diagram, but it's also a fact box because we have facts and information here about vegetarianism. And this is a favorite right here. It's a little bit old because, well, actually, no, this is actually, never mind. Yeah, so the next character is to enter the public domain. So this is a clever, this is a timeline infographic and very, very good use of illustration here representing a timeline and all the characters that are going to be in the public domain when their year comes up. Very cool, very highly visual, and it has a timeline hierarchy, as you can see here. And I'm just going to break down. So that's just a few really good examples of what an infographic is all about. Again, you're just giving more information to your audience about a specific topic, subject, a question, or even just to tell a story. Now, it's important to know that there are a couple of key infographic types. And the first one is what's known as a fast facts box. And basically, this is like one of the most common infographics out there. And it's just facts. That's all it is. It just has key information about a specific subject or topic. You can see on the example here, we have 5 key facts about stroke. And we have the facts on the right there. And that's it. It's just a facts box that gets straight to the point. These are great for like talking about like, maybe military equipment or aircraft information, or even, believe it or not, clothing policy. Facts box is one of the most safe methods when it comes to creating infographic because almost anything can be a fast facts box. And then we have what is known as a bio box. And a bio box is kind of the same thing as a fast facts box, except it's about a person, or it could be about multiple people. Basically, think of it as a biography facts box. In the example here, we have Charles Dickens, and we have just a little bit of his background information, when he was born, when he died, what he was best known for, and a little bit about his most famous works. So again, it's just giving facts about a subject, which makes it a bio box. So very good. Bio boxes are great for like distinguished visitors, change of commands. Maybe you have a post commander coming in, and you can give like almost like a biography, but in a visual format, which is pretty cool. And then we have the checklist, and it's exactly what it sounds like. It is just a list of things for your audience to do, depending on the topic. And in this case, we have pet safety hurricane checklist. And literally what it does is it gives a little interactivity to your audience because they can literally check the box when they get something or require something or do something. And that's what a checklist is. And it's just right here, it's just basically a checklist of things to get to keep your pet safe during a hurricane. And what's interesting about this example in particular is that we actually have a little bit of extra information besides just a checklist. Hurricane preparedness is definitely a big one for a checklist, but it can be applied to a variety of uses depending on, again, the topic or the subject. And then we have the list, and the list is basically a very simple list of items, and it can be one of the most effective when your topic is not very complex in nature and you don't need to break down so your audience can like easily digest a lot of information. You can see the example here, the 4 types of cover letters. 1, 2, 3, 4, it just lists them out, gives a little bit of information about what they are, what number 1 is, what number 3 is, but it's just a list. And here you can have like a list of like top, movies, um, different aircraft throughout like different years or decades. And essentially the list just lists item out whatever you're trying to explain or get through to the audience. And then we have the step-by-step guide. So this is different from a list. It's very similar, but it's a chronological list, meaning it is a step-by-step from beginning to middle to end. Think of it like a how-to. So you could take a complex task or a relatively simple task, and you can break it down so your audience can follow from step 1 to whatever many steps in order to complete a specific task. And then we have probably my favorite is the diagrams. And the diagrams are very, very popular when it comes to military application. They could go for uniform policy, how to wear the uniform, and you can have like a uniform like picture or illustration, and you can have like literally pointers going to the different pieces of the uniform saying this has to be 1 inch, 3/4 of an inch. Very popular. They also are popular when it comes to breaking down like different apparatuses when it comes to the, the the different things on it, like an aircraft or like a piece of equipment, the different types of weapon systems, and it can break down like the different parts essentially. Here on the example, we just have the most and least painful places on your body to tattoo. Pretty simple, but it's effective. And we're actually using colors here to represent like things that are painful, pointing to where it would be. And then it will also be least painful with those cooler colors there. So it's just a diagram, very, very useful and powerful when applied to the right application. And then we have the timeline. And the timeline is just a sequence of events. And basically, it's from the start to the end. And it could be about anything. It could be about base history. It could be about, the life cycle of a tank. It could be about the life cycle of weapon systems for the US Army. And it's just a sequence of events in a chronological order. And typically, your usual timelines will look something like on the right there. It's usually color coded. You have the dates that are pretty big or the years that are pretty big. And it gives a little bit of information about what those years represent in a chronological order. And then we have the quiz. And the quiz is a little bit difficult, especially considering the application. If it's just like a print infographic, this one might be a little bit harder. If it's like going on a wall or maybe being on display outside of a building, because a quiz gives interactivity to your audience. Like they will literally take a quiz and find out the result of their answer by the infographic. So, for example, right, are you headed for type 2 diabetes? You see that infographic on the right there. And it's just literally quizzing, polling the audience to basically check, like, yes, I got this. No, I don't have that. Yes, I have this. And it gives them some kind of answer or some kind of information at the end of it. So it adds that interactive element to it. And it can be effective. If you've ever been to a doctor's office or a dentist's office and you're looking at the pamphlets there, you might see like, a bunch of these type of infographics that will poll the patients to maybe go ahead and talk to the doctor when they get inside the office. So definitely effective. It depends on the application where they're going. And now let's get to, I would say, my legit top favorite infographic, because this is the most common infographic out there. As a matter of fact, it actually started the business of the infographic, and that is the factual index. So I'm just going to get right to it, and I'm just going to tell you what it is. And a factual index basically is kind of like a facts box, except it places emphasis in the form of color, in the form of type style, in the form of size and scale to point out key information about a specific thing. So, for instance, the facts on fat: love it, limit it, lose it. Notice, right? We have, pictures, we have illustrations, but what we're doing here is we're emphasizing certain key elements like love it, limit, lose it with size and color. That is what a factual index is. It's basically giving you the key information and putting emphasis on about it. It's going back to the principles of design when we're talking about emphasis, because that's what it's doing. It's not emphasizing everything. It's emphasizing things that are in hierarchy so your audience can easily grasp, analyze, break down, and digest it, literally. So the example on the right here is a common one. I'm going to zoom in a little bit here. So pretend this is a facts box, right? But it's not. It's a factual index. What makes this a factual index is notice how half as likely is larger. It's also the same color as that iconography right there. That is what a factual index is doing. It's emphasizing certain statistics or points or key bits of information in a larger data set. So 35% less likely right there. Because if your audience is not going to read the whole thing, okay, they're not going to read the whole thing, at least they can get the key bits of information, maybe like a 1 to 2 to 3 to 4 words that describe what that information set or data set is explaining. And 2 times as likely, 57% of Canadians, right? That is a factual index right there. Again, it's just emphasizing the most important parts of a data set or a piece of information so it's easier to grasp and analyze for the audience. They don't have a lot of time or they're just not interested. As a matter of fact, most of the examples that I shown you for this presentation are factual indexes. And just to kind of do a quick dive, show you a very good example of kind of a crazy factual index. So this one's on New York City, and it's definitely not the best. It's a little hard to read in some places, but what's cool about this is that notice what they're doing here. 8.4 million people, 800. Then we have temperature stats right here. It's using emphasis in the form of size right? To give out the most important bits of information. So when people glance through this, when they're reading through it, it places that emphasis so people understand it. So you can see right here, this is a good example of a factual index. A little bit hard to read though. I think I have another one. This one was Michigan. Ah, yes. And check it out, right? 5 miles, 555 feet, 1 million tons. That's what a factual index is all about. And that's really like one of the most popular in industry types of infographic. In fact, most of the infographics out there are actually factual indexes, depending on the application, of course. But that's the difference between just a facts box and a factual index, is that you're placing emphasis in the form of size, color, type, style, to give out the most important bits of information. And then moving right along, this is just another type of infographic, is what's known as a quote collection. And it's just a bunch of different quotes. It can be from multiple people or it could be from a single subject. But basically the idea is that it's kind of like a facts box. So it's just giving out quotes instead of facts. And it could be multiple subjects or a single subject for a specific maybe topic. So for instance, the example on the right is celebrity quotes on fatherhood. So we have a bunch of different celebrities giving their quote, their direct quote about fatherhood. And that's what a quote collection is. Pretty simple. And then we have what is known as interactive infographic. And what this is essentially is kind of like a dynamic way for your audience to play with numbers and different data sets so they can kind of understand and pull out maybe a trend or a theme or just are trying to learn some new information. A typical example of an interactive infographic would be when news outlets have the polling results and numbers by the different states. And when the audience clicks on a state, they can see the breakdown of the counties on who voted Democrat, who's Republican or independent. That's an example of an interactive infographic. Your user or your audience can click on things to learn more about what they're specifically interested in. Typically, most of these infographics are web-based, so meaning they have a dynamic server-side code, so they can change depending on the audience's clicks. But it's not limited to just web, because you also have things such as interactive PDFs. And there's a bunch of other different types of software that creates interactive elements for a package that an audience can essentially get that infographic that's an interactive one. Not too common unless you're specifically working on web, but it's just another form of, or should I say type of infographic. Now, when it comes to military applications, there's different types of infographics, not just like the actual types, but we have internal and we have external type of infographics. Here are a couple examples I made when I was working with FEMA for a humanitarian aid mission. And the one on the left here is a timeline infographic. And the one on the right is exactly the same thing, it's just a different visual style, also different elements when it comes to the topic of it as well. But these were made for just the internal audience, meaning nobody like public would be seeing this. So it's just an internal type of infographic for key leaders, stakeholders, and decision makers. But taking that same exact scenario when I was working with FEMA, this one was for public. So it was for external messaging. And basically, it was just where to stack your debris up from the hurricane so it can be disposed of. And that went out to the public. So you have the different types of infographics, but then you have the different purposes like external or internal, or maybe it's both. But that's something that you're going to have to kind of plan out before you even start making your infographic. Okay, and that kind of wraps everything up when it comes to the infographic, the different types, and their purpose. Again, the whole idea is that it is just breaking down a complex topic, or it could even be a basic topic, and it's giving that audience member more to look at, more to understand, more to analyze, more to maybe come up with a trend, because it's breaking down so they can easily absorb the information. Whereas a poster's brief, you got maybe a title, subtitle, maybe like one bit of information. The infographic has like four or usually more bits of information to get a bigger understanding of a specific subject or topic, or even to tell a story. And that's it. It can be as simple as you can think, or it could be as complex as you can think. But that's the infographic. This completes chapter one. In chapter two, what we're going to do is we're going to create a awesome infographic that has all the right elements, icons, data viz, illustrations, and we're going to use Adobe InDesign and Adobe Illustrator to create it. It's going to be a lot of fun, so stay tuned in chapter two, and I'll see you there.